Our friend Jason Stark joining us to hit one particularly interesting team in the AL West. Jason, before we get to that big picture discussion, we always start this with trivia. What do you have for us today? Good morning.
Morning, guys. Let's do a little Mike Trout trivia because we're going to talk Mike Trout.
Okay.
Now, Mike Trout's had 9 full seasons in the big leagues, finished in the top 5 in the MVP voting, and all 9 of them in a row. There's only one other player in baseball who's even had 2 consecutive seasons, the last 2 years, of top 5 MVP finishes. Can you name him?
So I got him.
Finished in the top 5 the last 2 years.
It's got to be a trick question. It's got to be a trick question.
It's not Grinky, but I got one.
So let's get into Mike Trout a little bit, Jason. And, you know, we talk about this all the time. The fact that the Angels have not given him much of a postseason platform, through nobody's fault, certainly. And it seems like the biggest goal, the stated goal, stated or unstated in Anaheim, is let's get to the postseason for Mike Trout. Let's get there so everybody can see how good he is. What is the timeline for this? Like, he's signed there for the rest of time. So realistically, when does this happen?
Well, I think we've reached the stage where now everybody around the Angels feels a sense of urgency to make this happen. Look, he's going to turn 30 years old in August, which means they have basically squandered the 20s of one of the greatest players of all time. If you look at Mike Trout's 20s, well, I'll tell you what, let's save that. Because I wrote a column recently about Mike Trout against Tom Brady. Watching the Super Bowl, Tom Brady, 7 titles, Mike Trout, 0 titles. So I wrote a column about how can this be? And let's start with this. The idea of any baseball player winning seven titles is preposterous. That chart you just saw, the division play era goes back over 50 years. We've had over 10,000 players play baseball in that division play era. You know what they all have in common? Not one of them has won 7 World Series. Nobody's even won 6. To find the last guy to win 7, you'd have to go all the way back to Mickey Mantle, who retired in 1968. And so the point is, baseball is so different than those other sports. Just impossible for any baseball player to have the impact of a quarterback in the NFL other than a great starting pitcher 1 or 2 nights a week. So isn't it fair to say that this has nothing to do with the greatness of Mike Trout?
That's a good point.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I'm one that thinks this, and Harold and I kick this around daily on this program, it seems. The BetMGM win total on the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim this year is 83.5. I think they're a better team than advertised. Everybody bemoans their pitching woes of the last few seasons. I don't think that continues this year. They've made some really shrewd adjustments to that 40-man roster. And I think the Angels are good, and maybe this postseason thing comes to an end this year because I've got them as a good enough team to win a wild card and play them to the fall. How about you?
Yeah, it could. I think the AL West is as winnable as it's been in 5 years, don't you? And yeah. I guess the question is, all right, everybody around the Angels says they feel a sense of urgency to get Mike Trout into the postseason. Joe Madden told me he feels a sense of personal responsibility because otherwise you've wasted the 20s of one of the great players in history. This is a chart of most wins above replacement by players in their 20s. Yeah, have you heard of those guys? So obviously Mike Trout's 20s have gone great other than the postseason part. The question as you just raised, Matt, is have they done enough? And, you know, we talked about that survey I did of 32 baseball people a couple of weeks ago, and the Angels were voted one of the most improved teams. But if we're going to answer the question, have they done enough? I think let's look at starting pitching, right? Because they've added Alex Cobb and Jose Quintana. How much better would people feel if it had been Yu Darvish and Blake Snell or obviously Trevor Bauer? This is what their rotation looks like now. I think it's better. I think they've gone through a bunch of depth acquisitions as opposed to going for that big splash. But let me ask you guys, if they had done the Trevor Bauer move instead of all the depth moves that they've made, Quintana, Cobb, Racel, Iglesias, those kinds of players, would you feel better about their chances?
I'm going to surprise you and say no, because I like the quantity over putting all your eggs into the basket of one player. Racel Iglesias acquisition was under-celebrated, and there were two guys, incumbents on that list, that I think are going to be better. By the way, they still don't know if Berea has another option or not. This is being discussed based on the COVID-shortened year last year. He may or may not have an option for 2021. And Griffin Canning, I think, pitches more like a 2 than a 5, which we had him listed as a 5 on that board.
Well, Jason, I think the only reason we're having this conversation, like it's so tragic that Mike Trout has not been in the postseason, is the rules have changed. You know, you think about Cal Ripken won the World Series in '83, didn't get back, right? Yeah. But yet he got in the postseason, but you had to win your division to get in. That was it. Now there's so many other ways to get into the postseason. And that's what makes this so hard to accept, that Mike Trout has only been in the postseason once or twice in this new format.
Yeah.
Look, he's made it one time. That was 2014, and he's never won a postseason game. But if you look at the list, Harold, of great players, even in modern times, who have never been to a World Series, Ken Griffey Jr. is on it. Frank Thomas is on it. Andre Dawson is on it. I did a list of active players who have never been to a World Series.
But I'd push back at you, though, Jason. I'd go, but they didn't play in the expanded playoff era.
Right. So, all right, let's look at active players, Harold. Freddie Freeman.
Yeah.
Nolan Arenado. Bryce Harper. Andrew McCutchen. Mike Trout. DJ LeMahieu.
Yeah.
There is an incredible list of active players who have never played in a World Series. And like sometimes it's just not that player's fault, obviously.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it.
I know we had some other stuff to get to with you. We're going to have to table that for next week because we have to pay off the trivia question since we're up against the top of the hour. This was the question. Mike Trout's now finished in the top 5 of the MVP voting 9 seasons in a row. Only one other player in baseball even has a current streak of 2 top 5 finishes in a row. Harold thinks he's got him, as per usual. What do you got?
Jason, I got Jacob deGrom.
Harold, that is not correct.
Mookie
He's only
Betts?
had one top 5 finish. Mookie Betts finished 8th in 2019. That's a great guess.
I'll just
that
say
would
it.
have been my guess.
I'll say it. Zach Greinke. No, who is it?
Freddie Freeman?
It's
DJ
that
LeMahieu.
DJ LeMahieu. I even just mentioned his name about 30 seconds ago.
We're batting like 75 cents for the season.
I really thought I had something with deGrom.
That was a great
guess. I really did. I had that like, I got this one.
Hey, Jason, thanks as always. Great stuff. Have a great weekend. We'll visit with you again next week.